Before we continue with the video, if you like what I'm doing here on this channel, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel a lot. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Welcome back to my Create an RPG series. In this episode, we will be taking a look into how we can now enhance our fireball ability and have it transmit our information to our projectile so it can act as sort of our payload for our information. So let's start off with our projectile base. So our projectile base we have, let's see here. I'm looking for, actually let's go to combat. Oh, this is good. So the fire projectile event here that happens, which happens when we reach the apex of our animation, when we fire on a projectile. So here we spawn a projectile which has a projectile stat created, which we have just hard-coded information for right now. So this would be a good place to just have this information funneled, because in this struct we can keep whatever information that we want to have available. And if we just drag it to our fire projectile now, you can see our event will now have the stats coming in there, and we'll just send them to our spawning of our projectile. Which means that we can now go to our fireball, which will then be expecting a projectile stat to be inputted here, and we can now determine what kind of information we want to send. So we can start off with just making a struct here so we know what to expect, and we'll keep the speed to what it is, and the explosion radius we can put a value, I guess, or we could create a value for it in our either our fireball or in our base class if we wanted to. It depends a little bit about where you want to have the information. Let's create something like 100 here, which means 1 meter, and we'll promote it to a variable, and we'll say explosion radius as default, and that's fine, I guess. Speed will keep like that, although you might want to be able to overwrite this as well, because you might want to have certain abilities or certain projectiles that spawn faster or slower. So that's something to keep in mind if you want to have that flexibility as well. But what I wanted to focus about a little bit today is the damage. So we want to calculate some kind of damage for our fireball, right? And what we can do is we can make a determination based on our level, and from our curve we can say we want to get a float value for a specific time, which again is our current ability level, like we have spoken about a few times in the past. And then we can take that value and then we can multiply this, not with a float, not with an integer, we want it to be a float, and we can say that it's supposed to be multiplying whatever value it gets here with its power multiplier. And this will make more sense in a moment, hopefully, because let's go here and see. We currently have a default curve which we created for our level before. So let's just duplicate this for now, and we'll call it our C for curve and say fireball damage or something, just so it's super clear what this is supposed to be doing, and we'll drag it to our abilities for now. So in here, this is what it looks like currently. And what we want to do here is something like, we want to keep a value of between 0 and 1, because I'll explain it a little bit later. But for now, let's just figure out what to put on these values for. So this first value here is going to be level 1 and a value of 0.1, let's say. So that's 10% of its max value, because we want it to be the scale between 0 and 1. Let's say the second value is supposed to be 0.3, and the third value is supposed to be 0.5, and then let's say 0.8, and then last one we can have at 1. And now this might not make a whole lot of sense, because why would we have such low values? But the point of this is essentially to have right, we want to mark all of these nodes. We can do this, and it will look something like this. So this is our damage curve essentially. So we can go to our fireball and we can say that we want to use our fireball damage curve now. And with that in mind, we know that a level curve here with a certain level will bring us a value now between 0 and 1. And then we can have the multiplier determining what kind of damage that is. So if we say that we want to have, when the fireball is at its peak potency, which in this case would be at level 5, it would have a value of 1. We can set the multiplier here for the ability to be 50. So we know that 50 times whatever value we get from the float is going to be the damage we get. So top range will be 50, and low range, which is level 1 here, we will be doing 5 damage. Then we can drag that off and set that to be our damage, and everything should be handled by the information later on. So let's see if that works for now. We'll go up here, and before we had as a default, I believe it was 10 damage. So let's see what happens now. Okay, first of all, it doesn't seem like it's spawning the AoE. Let's see what that is all about. The explosion. Okay, so we haven't set the explosion radius. That will make it easier for us to debug. Otherwise, we would have to hit the character. But now we're damaging ourselves, so we're going to be using this. So we cast the ball and we see, okay, we need to be somewhere around in this area. Okay, so you can see that our health bar has been moved a little bit. And let's check actually how much it moved. By going to our attributes and then checking our health, we can see that we have now 95. So our fireball, which is level 1 by default, sorry, current ability level 1, will do 50 times 0.1, meaning 5 damage, and that's what we're sending into the projectile, and that's what it's sending to everybody who's getting hit by it to do damage. If we now wanted to change this to ability level 5, we should be getting hit for 50 instead. So let's shoot the wall, and there you go. You can see that we've lost a much larger chunk of our life, and just to double check that it's correct, we'll go to our attributes and see that we have now lost 50 hit points. So this is a way that you can use the projectile as sort of your payload, and I don't think I will enhance it like that, but I will just mention it so that you can think in those terms if you haven't already. Just like how we created different ways of putting status effects, we can put a status effect in the world like in a box that applies it to us, or we can have it as an ability that does it or something like that. Equally, we can enhance it so that our projectile works similarly to our status effects and such things, where we can send in tags that we want to have added so that we can enhance, meaning that we would be, let's see, where is it? There, projectile base. So when we get to the point here where we decide that we should be applying damage to something, we can apply tags if we want to have tags for it, or we can have status effects sent with it so that when we apply damage, we also apply status effects that will expire after a certain amount of time, or not at all if you want them to be permanent, and things like that. So this can now work as a payload for all kinds of information that you want to have, and all that you need to do is essentially just expand upon the projectile stats structure and apply it over here in the destruction part, where you have decided which characters, or actually it can also happen up here if you just have one target, of course. But essentially, before destroying the actor, you make sure to send those effects to the character that you hit as well. And also you could implement some logic for your speed as well. So this is just like examples of how you can do with this. I don't want to go too in depth and expand upon this too far, because all RPGs are different, and as such, the further I niche or specialize this functionality, the less flexible it will be for the different types of RPGs you might want to build upon this. So yeah. But I think that should describe the situation fairly well. And with that, I think this is probably fine for this episode. I hope to see you in the next one. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Leave any suggestions or comments you have down below. Subscribe and share this video if you want to see more like it in the future. That is all for now. Keep on learning. Take care.